Hi, my name is Emily Carter, and I just turned 26 last month the day everything changed. I had just signed a $6 million contract with the Seattle Storm. I was on top of the world, ready to share my success with my family despite our complicated relationship. I never expected my sister Lauren to push me down the stairs out of jealousy. I definitely never thought I'd wake up alone in a hospital bed, abandoned by my own blood. Before I tell you how I went from signing a life-changing contract to waking up in a hospital bed, let me know where you're watching from. Drop a comment and subscribe if you want to hear stories that will remind you why family isn't always blood. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, with my parents, William and Elizabeth Carter, my older sister Lauren, who is 31, and my younger brother Ethan, who is 22. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family, but appearances can be deceiving. For as long as I can remember, there was an unspoken hierarchy in our household. Lauren was the golden child, Ethan was the baby of the family, and I was somewhere in between, often forgotten or overlooked. My parents attended every single one of Lauren's piano recitals and art exhibitions, praising her mediocre talents as if she were destined for greatness. Meanwhile, my basketball games were an inconvenience, something they'd attend only if nothing better was happening that day. Basketball isn't a real career path for a girl, my father would say dismissively whenever I mentioned my dreams. You should focus on something practical, like your sister. Lauren knew she had this power over me, the unconditional support of our parents, and she wielded it like a weapon. When we were younger, she'd break her own things and blame me, resulting in my punishment. As we grew older, her tactics became more sophisticated, more manipulative. She'd make snide comments about my appearance when friends came over or conveniently forget to tell me about family plans. "Oh, didn't Mom tell you we were having dinner at Grandma's tonight?" she'd say, with fake innocence, knowing full well she was supposed to pass the message to me by 16. I realized that if I wanted anything in life, I'd have to work for it myself. I got a job at a local grocery store, stacking shelves after school and on weekends. I saved every penny, knowing my parents would prioritize Lauren's college fund over mine. While they paid for her to attend an expensive art school in San Francisco, I applied for scholarships and worked multiple jobs to put myself through state college. Basketball was my escape, my passion, and eventually my ticket out. I'd practice for hours after school, often alone on the community court, perfecting my technique through countless drills. When it rained, I'd still be out there, the water, making the ball slippery and hard to control, but I never gave up. The sound of the ball hitting the wet pavement, the squeak of my shoes on the court, the swish of the net when I made a perfect shot, these became the soundtrack of my determination. It was during one of these solitary practice sessions in the rain that Coach Claire Thompson first noticed me. She was 41, tough as nails, with the kind of no-nonsense attitude that commanded respect. She pulled up in her battered blue sedan, rolled down the window, and watched me for a full 20 minutes. Before approaching, "You have natural talent," she said. Not as a compliment but as a simple statement of fact, but talent without discipline is useless. If you're willing to work harder than you've ever worked in your life, I can help you turn that raw ability into something special. Claire became more than just my coach. She became the maternal figure I'd always longed for. She pushed me to my limits, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and never once treated my dreams as anything less than achievable goals. Under her guidance, I transformed from a talented but unfocused player into a disciplined athlete with real potential. College scouts started showing up at my games during senior year. I received several scholarship offers and accepted one from a Division I school with a strong women's basketball program in Seattle. My parents barely acknowledged this achievement. "I suppose that'll save us some money," my mother commented, when I showed them my scholarship letter. As if that was the only value in what I'd accomplished. College was where I met Daniel Foster. He was in his first year of law school when we bumped into each other literally at the campus coffee shop. I was rushing to practice, he was buried in a constitutional law textbook, and our collision resulted in my sports drink spilling all over his notes. I expected anger, but instead, I got a smile that made my heart skip a beat. "Now I have an excuse to rewrite these," he joked, gesturing to the purple-stained pages. Honestly, I was looking for any reason to take a break. Daniel was different from anyone I'd ever met. He came from a loving, supportive family and couldn't understand the dynamic I described with mine. He'd listen in disbelief as I recounted stories from my childhood. "That's not normal, Emily," he'd say. Families are supposed to support each other, to build each other up, not tear each other down. With Daniel's emotional support and Claire's continued guidance, I thrived in college. I became a star player, breaking several school records, and gaining attention from professional scouts. My degree in sports management gave me a backup plan, but my heart was set on playing professionally. Meanwhile, my family continued their pattern of indifference. They attended exactly 2 of my college games in 4 years. Lauren had moved back home after failing to make it as an artist in San Francisco and was working at a local gallery, constantly complaining about how underappreciated her talent was. Ethan was following in my father's footsteps, studying business, and already showing signs of adopting their dismissive attitude toward my career choice. Despite their lack of support, I remained determined to succeed, not to prove them wrong, but to prove to myself that I was worthy of the dream I'd been chasing for so long. Every rejection, every dismissive comment, every missed game only fueled my determination. I'd make it with or without them. As I entered my final year of college, with professional scouts regularly attending my games and my name being mentioned in conversations about the next generation of women's basketball stars, I began to believe that all those years of hard work, all those rainy days on the court, all those early mornings and late nights of training were finally about to pay off. What I didn't know then was that my greatest challenge wouldn't come from the court, but from the people who were supposed to love me the most, the people who shared my blood but not my dreams, the people who'd rather see me fail than succeed on my own terms. The game that changed everything happened during the National College Championship. We were down by 2 points with 10 seconds left on the clock. The ball came to me at the 3-point line, and time seemed to slow down. I could see every option, every player's position, as if the court had suddenly become a chessboard and I could anticipate every possible move. I faked a pass to my teammate on the right, pivoted left, and launched myself into a jump shot. Just as the buzzer sounded, the ball arced through the air, and the entire arena fell silent. When it swished through the net, the crowd erupted in a roar that I can still hear in my dreams. We'd won the championship, and I'd scored the winning basket. That moment was captured by dozens of cameras, replayed on sports channels nationwide, and suddenly, my name was on everyone's lips. 3 talent scouts approached me after the game, business cards extended, promises of bright futures hanging in the air between us. The most persistent was from the Seattle Storm, a team that had been struggling in recent seasons and was looking for fresh talent to revitalize their lineup. Their initial offer was good, but Daniel Du, who had just passed the bar exam and was working at a sports law firm, advised me to negotiate. "They want you more than they're letting on," he said, reviewing the contract terms. "This is just their opening position. We can push for better conditions." The negotiations stretched over 3 months, with offers and counter going back and forth. Each time the Storm came back with a new proposal, Daniel would pore over it, highlighting areas where we could still improve the terms. It was a stressful time, filled with uncertainty and self-doubt. What if they withdraw the offer completely? I asked Daniel one night, anxiety keeping me awake. What if I'm pushing too hard, and they decide I'm not worth the trouble? "They won't walk away," he assured me, his confidence unwavering. "You're the best rookie prospect this season. They need you more than you need them." Coach Claire was equally supportive during this period. She had connections in the professional league and kept reassuring me that the interest from Seattle was genuine. "They're building their strategy around you," she told me. "They've already started designing plays that'll showcase your strengths. Trust me, they're not going anywhere." Finally, after what felt like an eternity of back and forth, we reached an agreement, $6 million over 3 years, with performance bonuses that could potentially add another $2 million. It was more than I'd ever dreamed possible. A validation of every sacrifice, every hour of practice, every moment of doubt I'd pushed through. Hands, and I struggled to maintain my composure, to not let the tears of joy and relief fall in front of all these important people. "Welcome to the family, Emily," James said. His grip after the day I signed the contract was surreal. The team, President James Mitchell, a legend in the basketball world, personally welcomed me to the Seattle Storm. Cameras flashed as we shook his smile genuine. "We believe you're going to help take this team to the championship." As I walked out of the Storm headquarters, contract signed and future secured, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Pride in what I'd accomplished, excitement for what lay ahead, but also a lingering sadness that I had no one from my actual family to share this moment with. Despite years of neglect and dismissal, some part of me still craved their approval, their recognition. In that moment of triumph, I made a decision that would ultimately change the course of my life in ways I could never have anticipated. I decided to go home and share my news with my family, hoping that perhaps this achievement, this undeniable success, would finally make them see me. Before heading to Portland, I video called Daniel from my hotel room. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "You know how they are. I don't want them to ruin this moment for you." "I have to try," I said. "Maybe this time will be different. Maybe now they'll finally be proud of me. Just remember, whatever happens, this is your achievement. No one can take that away from you. And I'm so incredibly proud of you, Emily." His words warmed my heart, but I still felt that pull. That need to share my success with the people who'd known me longest. Even if they'd never really seen me. I stopped at various stores before heading to my parents' house, picking out thoughtful gifts for each family member. For my father, an expensive watch he'd been eyeing for years. For my mother, a designer handbag from her favorite brand. For Lauren, a necklace from a trendy jewelry designer. For Ethan, the latest gaming console he'd been talking about. In my mind, I imagined their reactions, their surprise and delight, not just at the gifts but at the news that I, the overlooked middle child, had achieved something extraordinary. Maybe now they'd see that my path, though different from what they'd envisioned for me, was valid and worthy of respect. As I drove to the house I'd grown up in, hope and anxiety battled in my chest. I rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd tell them about the contract, about the future that was opening up before me. I imagined hugs, congratulations, maybe even a family celebration dinner. What I couldn't imagine, what I never saw coming, was the jealousy, the resentment, and the violence that would greet my success. As I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, I had no idea that I was about to experience the darkest betrayal of my life at the hands of the people who should have loved me the most. The familiar scent of my mother's lavender potpourri hit me as I opened the front door. The house looked exactly the same as it always had. From the family photos lining the staircase wall to the worn but clean furniture in the living room. For a moment, nostalgia washed over memories of childhood moments when things had been simpler. Before the family dynamics had solidified into their current toxic pattern. "Hello," I called out, setting down the shopping bags filled with gifts. "Anyone home?" My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her expression shifted from surprise to a forced smile when she saw me. "Emily, we weren't expecting you," she said, her tone making it clear that my unannounced visit was an inconvenience. "I wanted to surprise you all," I replied, trying to keep my voice light, not letting her lukewarm reception dampen my spirits. "Is everyone here? Your father's watching television in the den. Lauren and Ethan should be home soon." She glanced at the shopping bags. "What's all this?" "Just some gifts. I have good news, and I wanted to share it with everyone." My father appeared in the doorway, remote control still in hand, looking mildly annoyed at having his evening routine interrupted. "Emily," he acknowledged with a nod. "What brings you back?" Before I could answer, the front door opened, and Lauren walked in, followed closely by Ethan. Lauren's eyes narrowed at the sight of me, while Ethan at least managed a small smile. "Family reunion," Lauren said sarcastically, dropping her keys on the side table. "What's the occasion?" "I have something to tell you all," I said, my heart racing with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Can we sit down?" Together for a few minutes, we gathered in the living room, an uncomfortable silence settling over us. I took a deep breath and began to share my news. "I just signed a contract with the Seattle Storm," I announced, unable to keep the pride from my voice. $6 million over 3 years, with performance bonuses. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's eyebrows raised slightly, the first sign of genuine surprise I'd seen from him in years. My mother's mouth opened and closed as if she were struggling to find words. Ethan looked genuinely impressed, while Lauren's face had gone completely still, her knuckles white where she gripped her purse. $6 million, my father finally said, disbelief evident in his voice. "Yes," I confirmed, reaching for one of the shopping bags. "And I wanted to celebrate with you all. I brought some gifts." "Gifts," my mother repeated, her eyes now fixed on the bags. I began distributing the presents, explaining each choice as I handed them out. My father examined the watch with a mixture of appreciation and something else, something that looked almost like resentment. My mother ran her fingers over the soft leather of the designer bag, her expression unreadable. Ethan was genuinely delighted with the gaming console. immediately checking out its features. And then there was Lauren. She opened the jewelry box slowly, staring at the necklace inside without touching it. I remembered you admired this designer when we saw their collection in a magazine last year, I explained, hoping to see some softening in her expression. Instead, she snapped the box shut and placed it on the coffee table with deliberate care. How nice of you to throw your money around, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. Must feel good to show off like this, Lauren, my mother said half-heartedly, but there was no real reproach in her tone. No, Mom. Let's be honest for once, Lauren continued, her voice rising. Little Emily comes back after signing some big sports contract and thinks she can buy our approval with expensive gifts. Does that sum it up? I felt my face flush, with hurt and embarrassment. That's not what I was trying to do. I just wanted to share my happiness with you. Your happiness, Lauren repeated mockingly. Because it's always about you, isn't it? Even when you're gone. It's all Emily this and Emily that from your precious coach and your perfect boyfriend. Poor Lauren, stuck at home working a dead-end job while her sister becomes a sports star. No one's been talking about me, I said, confused by her outburst. I've barely heard from any of you in months. Right? Lauren laughed bitterly. That's why I had to hear from Mrs. Thompson next door about how proud I must be of my successful sister. That's why customers at the gallery ask me if I'm related to that basketball player and look disappointed when they realize I'm just the sales assistant. The room grew tense as Lauren continued to vent years of pent-up jealousy. To my shock, instead of trying to calm the situation, my parents began to side with her. You've always had a way of making everything about yourself, Emily, my father said, setting the watch box down on the table next to Lauren's discarded necklace. Coming here, flaunting your success, acting like we should all be grateful for your attention and your handouts. Handouts, I echoed, stunned by the accusation. They're gifts. I thought you'd be happy for me, happy that you've thrown away years on a career that'll be over the moment you get injured. My mother chimed in. Happy that you're living some unrealistic dream instead of building something stable and meaningful, like your sister has tried to do? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. In what universe was Lauren, who'd dropped out of art school and was working part-time at a gallery, the responsible one? I had a degree, a professional contract, financial security, and yet somehow, I was still being cast as the family disappointment. I also wanted to tell you that I'm planning to buy a new house, I said, trying to steer the conversation back to positive territory. Something big enough for all of us if you ever wanted to visit or even move closer to Seattle. This was the wrong thing to say. Lauren's face contorted with rage. Now you're offering to buy us a house, like we're some charity case for you to solve with your newfound wealth. Do you have any idea how condescending you sound right now? That's not what I meant, I protested, feeling the situation spiraling out of control. I just thought it'd be nice to have a place where we could all be together more often. We don't need your money or your pity, my father said coldly. Some of us have dignity. The implication that I somehow lacked dignity because I'd worked hard and succeeded in my chosen field felt like a slap in the face. I stood up, fighting back tears. I didn't come here to fight. I came to share something important with the people I thought would be happy for me. Clearly, I was wrong. I moved toward the staircase, intending to go to my old room and collect myself before leaving. Lauren followed me, her face flushed with anger. You always do this, she spat, her voice rising to a shout. Play the victim when things don't go your way. Poor Emily, so misunderstood, so underappreciated. I'm not playing anything, I said, my hand on the banister. I just need a minute alone. Alone? You want to be alone? Fine, Lauren screamed, and before I could react, she placed both hands on my shoulders and shoved me backward with all her strength. Time seemed to slow down as I lost my balance. I remember the look of pure hatred on Lauren's face, the gasp from Ethan, the terrible moment of weightlessness as I began to fall. My head hit the edge of a step with a sickening crack, and pain exploded through my skull. I tumbled down the remaining stairs, my body hitting each step with bone-jarring force until I finally came to rest at the bottom. The world going dark around me. The last thing I heard before losing consciousness was my mother's voice. Cold and distant. She deserved it. 3 words that would forever change how I viewed my family. 3 words that confirmed what I'd always suspected but never wanted to believe. They didn't just fail to love me. They actively wished me harm. The steady beep of a heart monitor was the first thing I became aware of. The sound penetrated the darkness, pulling me toward consciousness one electronic pulse at a time. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy, as if they'd been glued shut. When I finally managed to open them, harsh, fluorescent light sent daggers of pain through my skull. "She's waking up," a woman's voice said from somewhere to my right. "Go get Dr. Bennett." I tried to turn my head toward the voice, but a neck brace kept me immobilized. Panic began to rise in my chest as I realized I couldn't move properly. "Try not to move," the woman said, coming into my field of vision. She was wearing blue scrubs, her name tag identifying her as Sarah, RN. "You've been in an accident." "Not an accident," I thought. My sister pushed me. My family watched, but my throat was too dry to speak, and when I tried, only a raspy croak emerged. "Here," Sarah said, holding a straw to my lips. Small sips. The water was the most delicious thing I'd ever tasted, cooling my parched throat. After a few sips, I tried again. "How long?" I managed to ask. "You've been unconscious for 3 days," Sarah replied, her expression sympathetic. "Do you remember what happened?" Before I could answer, a tall man in a white coat entered the room, clipboard in hand. "Miss Carter, I'm Dr. Bennett. Glad to see you're awake. You had us worried." The next hour was a blur of questions, examinations, and devastating information. I had suffered a severe concussion, 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and trauma to my spine. The doctor was particularly concerned about the spinal injury, explaining that there might be long-term consequences for my mobility. "Mobility," I repeated, my mind immediately going to basketball. "Will I be able to play again?" Dr. Bennett's hesitation told me everything I needed to know even before he spoke. "It's too early to make any definitive statements. You'll need several months of physical therapy, possibly surgery, depending on how things progress. Professional sports may be out of the question for some time, perhaps permanently." The words hit me like another fall down the stairs. My contract, my future, everything I'd worked for, suddenly hanging by the thinnest of threads. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. "I need to call my boyfriend," I said, "and my coach. They need to know what happened." "Of course," Dr. Bennett nodded. "Nurse Sarah will bring you a phone. But first, would you like us to contact your family? No one has been here to visit yet, but we can reach out to them if you provide contact information." His words sent a chill through me. No one had been here. Not my parents, not my siblings, no one from my family had bothered to check if I was alive or dead after I was pushed down a flight of stairs in their own home. "They know what happened," I said quietly. They were there. Dr. Bennett and Nurse Sarah exchanged a quick glance, and I could see the unasked questions in their eyes. Before they could press for details, I asked for time alone, claiming I needed rest. In reality, I needed space to process this new betrayal, this confirmation that my family's indifference had crossed the line into active cruelty. Later that evening, Nurse Sarah returned to check my vitals. As she adjusted my she hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but I thought you should know. Your family did come by once. The first night you were brought in. They didn't ask to see you. They just wanted to collect your personal effects, your phone, wallet, keys. Hospital policy required us to release them only to family. I'm sorry." The revelation was like a knife twisting in my gut. They hadn't come to check on me, to see if I was recovering, to apologize. They'd come for my belongings, like vultures picking over a carcass. "Thank you for telling me," I whispered, tears finally breaking free and sliding down my cheeks. Nurse Sarah squeezed my hand gently before leaving, and I was once again alone with the beeping monitors and the crushing weight of abandonment. The next morning, the door to my room burst open, and Daniel rushed in, his face pale with worry. When he saw me bandaged and bruised, hooked up to various machines, he stopped dead in his tracks, his expression shifting from concern to horror. "Emily," he breathed, crossing the room in 3 long strides and carefully taking my uninjured hand in his. "My God, what happened? I've been trying to call you for days." The dam broke, and everything came pouring out in a torrent of words, sobs, and rage. I told him about going home, about the gifts, about Lauren's jealousy and my parents' betrayal. I told him about the fall, about waking up alone, about learning that my family had only come to take my possessions. Daniel listened in stunned silence, his grip on my hand tightening with each new detail. When I finished, he was literally shaking with anger. "I'm going to make them pay for this," he said, his voice low and controlled, which somehow made it more frightening than if he'd shouted. This wasn't an accident. This was assault, and they left you here to die. They took my phone, I realized suddenly. Have you been trying to call them, too? Every day since you missed our check-in call, Daniel confirmed. Your number went straight to voicemail, and when I tried your parents' house, your father answered once, told me you weren't there, and then they stopped picking up. I was about to file a missing persons report when the hospital finally contacted me using the emergency contact information in your wallet that they found in your car. My car. I'd forgotten about it, still parked in my parents' driveway, another piece of property they'd probably try to claim. There's something else, I said, hesitating to voice the thought that had been haunting me since speaking with Dr. Bennett. The doctor says I might not be able to play again. The contract, the storm, everything we worked for, it might all be gone. Daniel's expression softened. Let me worry about the contract. Right now, you focus on getting better. We'll figure out the rest later. Later that day, Coach Claire arrived, having flown in from Seattle as soon as Daniel called her. Unlike Daniel, she didn't try to hide her anger. Those people are not your family, she declared, pacing at the foot of my bed. Family doesn't do this to each other. As far as I'm concerned, they're dead to us. The team is already talking about voiding the contract, I said, voicing my greatest fear. Daniel's been trying to reach the management, but no one's returning his calls. Let them try, Claire said fiercely. We have options, legal options, medical options. This isn't over, Emily. Not by a long shot. As the day wore on and the initial shock began to fade, a new emotion started to take root in me: determination. The same determination that had driven me through years of practice. Through college, through every obstacle on my path to professional basketball. I might be down, but I wasn't out, not yet. That evening, Nurse Sarah came in with more disturbing news. I checked your admission paperwork, she said, her voice hushed. Your health insurance information was entered incorrectly, and, when we tried to verify it, we discovered your coverage has been canceled. She hesitated. There have been some large withdrawals from your bank account in the past 2 days. The hospital financial office flagged it because they were trying to process a payment authorization. What? I tried to sit up, wincing, as pain shot through my ribs. That's impossible. I'm the only one with access to that account. Unless someone has your cards and PIN, Daniel said grimly. Or if they forged your signature on withdrawal slips. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. My wallet, my phone, my keys, all in the possession of people who'd already proven they wished me harm. People who knew my routines, my passwords, possibly even my banking information. They're stealing from me, I whispered, the betrayal reaching new depths I hadn't thought possible. After everything else, they're actually robbing me while I'm in the hospital. Daniel's jaw tightened. I'll call the bank right now. Freeze your accounts. And then I'm calling the police. This stops today. As he stepped out to make the calls, I lay back against the pillows, a strange calm settling over me. The pain was still there, both physical and emotional, but now it was accompanied by a cold, clear resolve. My family had finally shown their true colors beyond any shadow of doubt. There'd be no more seeking their approval, no more hoping for reconciliation. They'd made their choice, and now I'd make mine. When Daniel returned, his expression told me he had bad news. The damage is extensive, he said. They've emptied your checking account, maxed out your credit cards. They even tried to access your investment account, but thankfully that required additional verification. How much? I asked, my voice steady. Nearly $80,000, all told. I closed my eyes, absorbing this final blow. Then I opened them again, meeting Daniel's gaze directly. I want to press charges, I said. All of them, Lauren, for assault. All of them for theft. I want them to face consequences for what they've done. Daniel nodded, a grim smile spreading across his face. I was hoping you'd say that. I already have a friend at the district attorney's office on standby. As night fell and visiting hours came to an end, I found myself alone again in the hospital room, but this time, the solitude felt different. I wasn't abandoned. I'd simply outgrown the toxic people who'd claimed to be my family. In their place, I'd found true support in Daniel and Claire, people who'd dropped everything to be by my side when I needed them most. Tomorrow would bring doctors, lawyers, police reports, and the beginning of a long fight for justice and recovery. But tonight, despite the pain and uncertainty, I felt something unexpected stirring in my chest. Freedom. The freedom that comes from finally accepting a harsh truth and deciding to move forward without the weight of false hopes and expectations. My family had left me alone in a coma, but I wouldn't face the future alone. And they'd soon learn that their actions had consequences they never imagined. When they left me for dead at the bottom of those stairs, the next morning, I woke to find Daniel already in my room, laptop open, legal pad filled with notes. He had that focused look I'd come to recognize from his most challenging cases, the one that meant he was building a case piece by methodical piece. "Good morning," he said, noticing I was awake. "How are you feeling?" "Like I fell down a flight of stairs," I replied, attempting a weak smile, but ready to fight back. "What have you got there?" "The beginnings of our case against your family," he said, turning the laptop so I could see the screen. "I've been up half the night gathering evidence. The good news is we have a lot to work with." Over the next hour, Daniel walked me through what he'd discovered. My parents had not only withdrawn money from my accounts, but had also been systematically going through my personal information, contacting creditors, even attempting to access my email accounts. "The bank has frozen everything and is investigating the fraudulent withdrawals," Daniel explained. "Your credit cards have been canceled, and we've started the process of disputing the charges they racked up. But this is just the financial side. The assault is the more serious charge, and that's where we need to focus our attention." Dr. Bennett arrived for his morning rounds, bringing both good and bad news. The good, my brain scans showed no permanent damage from the concussion. The bad, the spinal trauma was worse than initially thought, and I'd definitely need surgery to prevent long-term complications. "What about basketball?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Professional sports will be difficult, if not impossible, after this type of injury," he confirmed gently. "Even with the best possible outcome from surgery and rehabilitation, the level of physical stress that professional basketball puts on the spine would likely cause serious problems down the line." I nodded, swallowing hard. "When can I have the surgery?" "We can schedule it for early next week. In the meantime, we need to start building your strength up as much as possible. Physical therapy will begin tomorrow, just some gentle exercises to prevent muscle atrophy." After Dr. Bennett left, I turned to Daniel, tears welling in my eyes but determination in my voice. "They didn't just hurt me. They stole my career, my future, everything I worked for. Gone in an instant because Lauren couldn't stand to see me succeed." "I know," Daniel said, taking my hand. "And we're going to make them pay for every bit of it. Claire's already in talks with the team management," he continued. "There may be options for you with the Storm. Even if you can't play coaching positions, talent development, front office work. Nothing's decided yet." Later that afternoon, Detective Martinez from the Portland Police Department arrived to take my statement. He was a serious man with kind eyes, the type who'd seen it all but hadn't let it harden him completely. "I want to be clear about what you're alleging," he said after I'd finished recounting the events. "You're saying your sister deliberately pushed you down the stairs with the intent to cause serious bodily harm, and that your parents not only failed to seek immediate medical attention for you but also subsequently stole your personal property and financial assets." "Yes," I confirmed. "And there are witnesses." "My brother Ethan was there. He saw everything." Detective Martinez made a note. "We'll be interviewing all parties involved. Do you have any other evidence to support your claims?" Daniel spoke up. "We have the bank and credit card records showing unauthorized transactions after Emily was hospitalized. We also have hospital records showing that family members collected her personal effects but didn't inquire about her condition. That establishes the theft." Detective Martinez nodded. "The assault is trickier without direct evidence or cooperative witnesses." "There might be something else," I said, a memory suddenly surfacing. "Mrs. Thompson, our neighbor, her security camera points toward our front door. If it was recording that night, it might have captured Lauren and me through the window." Detective Martinez's expression brightened slightly. "That's very helpful. We'll look into it immediately." After he left, Daniel made some calls to follow up on the security footage lead. To our surprise and relief, Mrs. Thompson not only had the footage but was eager to help. She'd always been kind to me, often attending my high school games when my own parents wouldn't bother. "She says the camera definitely captured the front of your house, including parts of the entryway visible through the side window," Daniel reported after speaking with her. "She's giving the footage to the police right now." Another unexpected piece of evidence emerged when Daniel was going through my recovered belongings. My phone, which my family had taken but which the police had retrieved during their initial investigation, had been recording audio at the time of the incident. You must have accidentally triggered the voice memo app before the argument started. Daniel explained, his voice filled with controlled excitement as he played the recording for me. The quality wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough to hear Lauren's angry accusations, my parents' cold dismissal of my success. And finally, the crucial moment, you always do this, play the victim when things don't go your way. Poor Emily, so misunderstood, so underappreciated. I'm not playing anything. I just need a minute alone. Alone. You want to be alone? Fine. Then came the sounds of the struggle, my cry as I fell, the terrible thuds as my body hit each step. And finally, most damningly, my mother's cold voice, she deserved it. Followed by my father's equally chilling response, get her wallet and phone. We need her cards and passwords before anyone else gets involved. The recording continued for several more minutes, capturing their discussion of how to access my accounts and what to tell people about my absence. This is better than any witness, Daniel said, his eyes wide. This is them in their own words, not only failing to help you after the assault but actively planning to steal from you while you were unconscious. With the audio recording and the security footage from Mrs. Thompson, Detective Martinez was able to move quickly. Arrest warrants were issued for Lauren on charges of aggravated assault and for my parents on charges of theft, fraud, and criminal negligence. While the legal machinery began to turn, I focused on my physical recovery. The days blurred together in a routine of pain management, physical therapy sessions, and preparations for my upcoming surgery. Claire divided her time between the hospital and meetings with the Seattle storm management, fighting to salvage what she could of my contract. They're sympathetic to your situation, she reported after one particularly long meeting. They're exploring options for a modified contract that would include a position with the organization while you recover, with the possibility of activating the player contract if you're able to return to the court. It was the most hopeful news I'd heard since waking up in the hospital, a tiny ray of light in the darkness that had enveloped my life. 5 days after I regained consciousness, as I was finishing a physical therapy session, Nurse Sarah rushed into the room, her expression alarmed. Your family's here, she said in a hurried whisper. All of them. They're demanding to see you, saying there's been a misunderstanding about the police investigation. Security's trying to keep them in the lobby, but they're making a scene. My heart rate spiked, the monitor beside my bed beeping in response to my sudden stress. Daniel, who'd been sitting in the corner reviewing legal documents, was on his feet instantly. They have no right to be here, he said, already pulling out his phone. I'll call Detective Martinez. Don't let them anywhere near this room. But even as he spoke, raised voices could be heard from the hallway, growing louder as they approached my father's authoritative tone, my mother's high-pitched indignation, Lauren's angry accusations. She's our daughter. We have every right to see her. This is all a misunderstanding. Emily's confused from her medications. She's lying about everything. I never pushed her. The voices were right outside my door now, and I found myself shrinking back against the pillows. Genuine fear coursing through me. These people, these strangers who shared my blood, had already shown how little they valued my life. What would they do if they got into my room? Just as the door handle began to turn, a new voice joined the cacophony in the hallway, calm but carrying an unmistakable authority. William Carter, Elizabeth Carter, Lauren Carter, I'm Detective Martinez. Portland PD. I believe you're already familiar with the restraining order prohibiting you from contacting Emily Carter. I'm going to have to ask you all to step away from that door immediately. The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the sounds of protest, quickly cut short by Detective Martinez's no-nonsense response. You can either leave, voluntarily, or you can leave in handcuffs for violating a court order. Your choice, but you have about 10 seconds to decide. More angry muttering, the sound of retreating footsteps, and then a gentle knock on my door. Miss Carter, it's Detective Martinez. Your family's being escorted from the premises. Is it all right if I come in? When I gave permission, he entered, followed by a uniformed officer who remained by the door. Detective Martinez's expression was a mixture of professional concern and personal sympathy. Are you all right? He asked. I nodded, though my hands were still shaking. Thank you for getting here so quickly. Fortunately, I was already on my way to update you, he explained. We've completed our investigation, and the district attorney has decided to move forward with all charges. Your family will be formally arraigned next week. Given what just happened here, I wouldn't be surprised if the judge denies bail, at least for your sister. It was a small victory, but an important one. My family would face consequences for their actions, would be held accountable in a way they'd probably never experienced before. As Detective Martinez left, promising to station an officer outside my room for the remainder of my hospital stay, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief that the immediate danger had passed, satisfaction that justice was being served, but also a profound sadness for what might have been, for the loving family I'd always wanted but never had. Daniel returned to my bedside, taking my hand in his. "It's almost over," he said softly. "Soon they won't be able to hurt you anymore." "It's never going to be over," I replied, the reality of my situation settling heavily on my shoulders. "They're still my family, the people who raised me, the people who were supposed to love me. How do I ever get past that?" "By building something better," he said firmly. "By surrounding yourself with people who truly care about you, who support you, who celebrate your successes instead of resenting them, by creating a new family, one based on love and respect rather than blood." As I looked at him, this man who'd dropped everything to be by my side, who was fighting for me with every resource at his disposal, I realized that perhaps I'd already begun to build that new family. And perhaps, despite everything I'd lost, that was something worth holding on to. The day of the arraignment arrived 6 weeks after my fall. I'd undergone spinal surgery 2 weeks earlier, and while the procedure had been successful, I was still weak and in considerable pain. The doctors had advised against attending court, concerned about the physical strain and emotional stress it'd place on my recovering body. But I was determined to be there to look my family in the eyes as they faced the consequences of their actions. This wasn't about revenge, I told myself. It was about standing up for myself, about refusing to be a victim any longer. "Are you sure about this?" Daniel asked that morning as he helped me into the wheelchair that'd be my mobility aid for the foreseeable future. "No one would blame you for watching the proceedings remotely. I need to be there," I insisted. "I need them to see me, to know that they didn't break me, even if they tried their best." The courtroom was packed when we arrived. News of the case had leaked to the press, the story of a professional athlete betrayed by her own family, too sensational to ignore. Cameras flashed as Daniel wheeled me down the center aisle to our place beside the prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Rachel Morgan. "Are you ready for this?" she asked quietly, her expression sympathetic but professional. "They'll all be here, and their lawyers will likely try to paint you as the aggressor or suggest that the fall was an accident that you're exploiting for financial gain." "I'm ready," I assured her, though my heart was racing. "We have the evidence. The truth is on our side." The side door opened, and 3 figures were led in by court officers, my parents and Lauren, all dressed in conservative clothing that couldn't quite hide the anger and resentment in their expressions. They looked smaller, somehow less intimidating. Then they'd loomed in my memory, just ordinary people who'd done an extraordinarily terrible thing. As they took their places at the defense table, their eyes scanned the courtroom, eventually landing on me. My father's face hardened. My mother's gaze slid away, unable or unwilling to maintain eye contact. But Lauren stared directly at me, her expression a mixture of defiance and something else. Something that might almost have been fear. The proceedings began with the formal reading of the charges. Lauren was charged with aggravated assault, while my parents faced charges of theft, fraud, criminal negligence, and conspiracy. All 3 pleaded not guilty, as expected. The prosecutor presented the evidence we'd gathered, the security footage from Mrs. Thompson's camera, which clearly showed Lauren pushing me through the window, the audio recording from my phone, capturing not only the assault but also my parents' callous response and subsequent planning to steal my assets, bank records showing the withdrawals and fraudulent charges, hospital records documenting my injuries and my family's behavior. Throughout the presentation, I watched my family's faces. My father maintained a stoic expression, though his jaw tightened noticeably when the audio recording was played. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, playing the role of the distressed parent. Though she'd shown no such concern when I was actually injured, Lauren's defiance gradually crumbled as the evidence mounted, replaced by a growing panic as the reality of her situation became clear. Their defense attorneys did their best, suggesting that the push was a heat of vehement reaction in a family argument that had gotten out of hand, that my parents had taken my belongings only to keep them safe, that the whole situation was being blown out of proportion. But their arguments seemed weak and desperate in the face of such overwhelming evidence. As the hearing progressed, the courtroom door opened quietly, and a familiar figure slipped in. Taking a seat in the back row, James Mitchell, president of the Seattle Storm, the man who'd shaken my hand and welcomed me to the team on what now felt like a lifetime ago. He nodded gravely when he caught my eye, his presence a silent show of support that meant more than words could express. When it came time for bail to be considered, Ada Morgan argued forcefully against it. Your Honor, the defendants have already demonstrated a willingness to harm the victim and to exploit her vulnerable state for financial gain. They attempted to violate the restraining order by forcing their way into her hospital room. They represent an ongoing threat to her safety and recovery. To my surprise, the judge agreed, denying bail for all three defendants. They'd remain in custody until trial, a process that could take months, as the court officers moved to lead them away. My father finally looked directly at me, his expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been shame. Then his gaze shifted to the back of the courtroom where James Mitchell sat, and his face went pale. "Oh my God, it's James Mitchell," he exclaimed, loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear. "The president of the Seattle Storm is here." The outburst caused a stir in the courtroom, heads turning to see the sports executive. My father seemed to suddenly realize the full implications of what he and the rest of my family had done, not just to me personally, but to my career, to my relationship with a major sports franchise, to my future. My mother, following his gaze, gasped and actually swayed on her feet, requiring a court officer to steady her. Lauren looked like she might be sick, the color draining from her face as the magnitude of her actions finally hit home. For a moment, our eyes met across the courtroom, and I saw something I'd never seen in her expression before: genuine for getting caught, not for the consequences she was facing, but perhaps, just perhaps, for what she'd done to her sister. As they were led away, Daniel squeezed my shoulder gently. "It's over," he said softly, "at least this part," but I knew it wasn't really over. The trial still lay ahead, and beyond that, the long road of physical recovery, of rebuilding my life and career from the shattered pieces my family had left behind. Yet, for the first time since waking up in that hospital bed, I felt a sense of closure, of a chapter ending and a new one beginning. After the courtroom cleared, James Mitchell made his way over to where Daniel and I waited. "Miss Carter," he said formally, extending his hand. "On behalf of the Seattle Storm organization, I want to express our full support during this difficult time." "Thank you for coming," I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. "I know the team must be reconsidering the contract after my injury." "Actually," he replied, a small smile forming, "that's part of why I'm here. The organization has been following your situation closely, and we've made a decision. While your playing career may be on hold for now, we'd like to offer you a position as an assistant player development coach with full medical benefits and a modified version of your original contract. If and when you're able to return to the court, the door will be open." The offer was so unexpected, so generous, that for a moment I couldn't speak. After everything that had happened after the betrayal and the loss and the pain, here was a gesture of faith in my future, in my abilities, in my worth as a person and a professional. "I don't know what to say," I finally managed, tears welling in my eyes. "Say yes," James encouraged. "The Storm needs people like you, Emily, people with determination, with heart, with the ability to overcome adversity. Those qualities don't disappear just because you can't play right now." "Then yes," I said, a smile breaking through the tears. "Absolutely yes." As we left the courthouse, reporters clustered at the bottom of the steps, cameras flashing, microphones extended. Daniel started to steer my wheelchair toward a side exit to avoid them, but I placed my hand on his arm. "No," I said quietly. "I want to talk to them. I want to tell my story in my own words." He hesitated, then nodded, understanding that this was part of my healing process, part of reclaiming my narrative from those who'd tried to destroy it. As we approached the press, I straightened in my wheelchair as much as my healing spine would allow, lifted my chin, and prepared to face the world on my own terms, no longer defined by the family that had betrayed me, but by the strength I'd found in surviving that betrayal. 18 months can change everything. That's what I kept thinking as I wheeled myself onto the court for the first time since the fall, not as a player. Not yet, but as Coach Emily Carter, assistant player development coach for the Seattle Storm. The journey to this moment had been longer and harder than anything I'd faced before. 3 surgeries on my spine, countless hours of physical therapy, days when the pain was so intense I couldn't get out of bed, nights when the nightmares of falling, of betrayal, of abandonment would wake me screaming, but there'd been progress. 2. Graduating from the wheelchair to a walker, from the walker to crutches, from crutches to a cane, and finally, just last month, taking my first unaided steps in over a year. Shaky steps, but mine. The trial had concluded 6 months after the arraignment. Lauren was sentenced to 5 years for aggravated assault, with the possibility of parole after 3. My parents received 3 years each for their crimes, along with restitution orders for the money they'd stolen. The financial compensation meant nothing to me, but the acknowledgement of their wrongdoing, the public record of what they'd done, meant everything. I hadn't spoken to any of them since that day in court. My mother had written several letters from prison, filled with self-pity and thinly veiled accusations that I'd somehow orchestrated their downfall. I stopped reading them after the 3rd one. My father hadn't reached out at all, his pride apparently preventing even an insincere attempt at reconciliation, but Ethan had surprised me. My younger brother, who'd been present during the assault but hadn't participated, who hadn't spoken up in my defense but hadn't joined in the theft either, had contacted me through Daniel 6 months after the trial. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he'd written. "I stood by and did nothing while they hurt you. I was a coward, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be better. I've cut ties with Mom, Dad, and Lauren. I'm seeing a therapist to understand why I went along with their treatment of you for so long. I don't expect you to welcome me back into your life, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry." I hadn't responded immediately, unsure if I could or should let any member of my blood family back into my life. But eventually, after discussing it with Daniel and my own therapist, I agreed to a carefully supervised meeting in a neutral location. Ethan had been nervous, fidgeting with his coffee cup, unable to meet my eyes at first. He looked older, more worn than his 22 years should have allowed. "I don't know how to begin to apologize," he'd said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then don't," I'd replied, not unkindly. "Just tell me why. Why did they hate me so much? Why did you go along with it?" The conversation that followed was painful but necessary. Ethan explained how our parents had always favored Lauren, how her constant need for attention and validation had shaped our family dynamic from the beginning. How he, as the youngest, had learned early on that siding with Lauren and our parents was the path of least resistance. "It was never about you," he'd said. "Not really. It was about them, their insecurities, their twisted view of the world. Lauren couldn't stand that you were actually talented, actually successful on your own merits, when she'd been told her whole life that she was special but never managed to prove it. And Mom and Dad couldn't handle that you succeeded without their help, that you didn't need them the way Lauren did." I hadn't forgiven him that day, or the next time we met, or the time after that. Forgiveness, I'd learned, wasn't a single decision but a process, one that required time and effort from both sides. But I'd allowed him back into my life in a limited way, and over time, we'd begun to build something new, something tentative, but potentially real. Daniel had been my rock throughout it all. He'd moved to Seattle with me when I accepted the coaching position, setting up a new branch of his law firm there. Our relationship had deepened through the crisis, forged in the fire of shared struggle. 6 months ago, he'd proposed, and I'd said yes without hesitation. Claire had remained a constant presence as well, serving as a mentor in my new coaching role, guiding me through the transition from player to teacher. She'd been the one to suggest I might eventually return to playing, not at the professional level, perhaps, but in some capacity. The body remembers. She'd told me during a particularly difficult therapy session when I was struggling to relearn movements that had once been as natural as breathing. "And so does the heart. You're still an athlete, Emily, whether you ever step foot on a professional court again or not." The Seattle Storm organization had been true to their word, honoring their commitment to me, even as the months of recovery stretched into a year and then beyond. James Mitchell had become something of a paternal figure, checking in regularly on my progress, always with genuine concern rather than corporate obligation. And now here I was, on the court again. The rookie players I'd been assigned to work with were warming up, unaware of the significance of this moment for me. To them, I was just Coach Carter, the young assistant with the serious expression and the slight limp as I watched them practice. Offering occasional guidance on form or strategy, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. This wasn't the future I'd envisioned for myself all those years ago, practicing alone in the rain. But it was a future nonetheless, one with purpose and meaning, one I'd fought hard to create, from the ashes of betrayal. The journey had taught me many things, but perhaps the most important was this: Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love, by support, by the people who stand beside you in your darkest moments and believe in you when you can no longer believe in yourself. Daniel, Claire, James, the teammates who'd visited me in the hospital, the physical therapists who'd celebrated every small victory with me, they were my true family. Coach Carter. One of the rookies approached, ball in hand, interrupting my thoughts. Could you show me that move again? The one where you shift your weight to create space for the shot? I smiled, taking the ball from her. My movements were slower than they once were, more deliberate, but the muscle memory was still there, the knowledge still intact. Like this, I demonstrated, feeling the familiar rhythm of the game flow through me. It's all about timing and confidence, believing in yourself even when no one else does. The young player nodded, her expression serious as she tried to mimic my movements. I watched her, offering corrections, encouragement, the things I'd once longed for but never received from my own family. Later that evening, as Daniel and I sat on the balcony of our apartment overlooking the Seattle skyline, I shared these thoughts with him. I think I'm finally at peace with what happened, I said, watching the sun set over the city, that it's become our home. Not because I've forgotten, or because it doesn't still hurt sometimes, but because I can see now that it led me here to this life, to these people, to you. He took my hand, his expression soft in the fading light. You know what amazes me about you? It's not that you survived what they did to you. It's that you refused to let it define you. You took all that pain and turned it into something beautiful. Not alone, I reminded him. I never could have done it alone. No one should have to, he agreed. That's the point, isn't it? We're not meant to face life's challenges in isolation. We're meant to lift each other up, to be better together than we could ever be apart. As darkness fell, and the city lights began to twinkle like earthbound stars, I thought about the long road that had brought me here, about the family I'd lost and the family I'd found. I thought about the young players I was now coaching, about the possibility that someday I might help someone else find their path, their strength, their voice. The pain of betrayal would always be a part of my story, a scar that'd never completely fade. But it was no longer the whole story, no longer the defining chapter. It was simply one piece of a larger narrative, one that continued to unfold in ways I could never have imagined. And in that moment, watching the night settle over Seattle, my hand in Daniel's, my future stretching out before me with possibilities I was only beginning to explore, I knew that I hadn't merely survived my family's betrayal, I'd transcended it. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone you trusted betrayed you? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of overcoming family betrayal resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that family isn't always blood, but the people who stand by you when it matters most. Thank you for listening. And remember, the family you choose is often stronger than the family you're born into.